apparently we've been having far too much fun and we need to do some more graptolites. Which, of course, is a wonderful thing to have to do, and I have no reluctance to do this whatsoever, and we found you a really interesting one.
Yeah, it's a good one today. Hello, everyone.
Sorry. Hello again, everyone. You may remember that graptolites, which apparently are amazing, are one of the most abundant groups of fossils in the Ordovician and Silurian especially, and in fact we did an entire introduction video describing them and introducing them to you, which you can find about there somewhere. So obviously it's an entire major group of fossils which is extensively used for dating rocks, and often they're kind of overlooked because of that utility. People often think that graptolites are useful but not necessarily interesting because they only see them in the context of being useful.
And it's also fair to say that we don't know very much about graptolite ecology because of them. They have living relatives, but the living relatives are small benthic things that are also difficult to study. We haven't got a good analogue in the modern for how the planktonic graptolites lived. And it's also true to say that a lot of the stuff that has been written about graptolites, including graptolite ecology, has not been written by people who had actually studied modern ecology. So sometimes there might have been certain assumptions made that they wouldn't have made if they knew a bit more about modern ecology, shall we say.
That's amazingly polite for you.
I'm on video.
Oh yeah, that doesn't normally stop you. Yeah, anyway, there are some speculations that have got into the literature on ecology that probably are not soundly grounded in fact. But that is not to say that there isn't a lot of interesting stuff to do with them, and some graptolites are much more familiar than others. Your standard things like dicellograptus, the straight lines on here which have two sets of thecae going back to back. The thecae are the little tubes the animals lived in. And then you've got other ones with multiple branches, and we'll remind you what one of these things look like. So should we have a quick look at a dicellograptus, just because we've got some really nice ones nearby?
Yes, let's get the microscope fired up.
Right. Right. So this here is Dicellograptus cambriensis, named after Wales, obviously. And you can see it's got the two branches. Can we see the tube? So you want to do some fiddling with it? Let's No. Let's just zoom in and let's actually see it properly.
Right.
You turn it all black and nobody can see anything at all. The disadvantage of one of these things.
Okay, so that's just a random bit in the middle of the stipe. Well, in the middle of the colony. So in this particular graptolite, they've got slightly fancy thecae in that they're coming straight out at an angle, and then the end bit sort of curves back, so it's pointing towards the stipe again. So the aperture is actually pointing inwards rather than outwards, as in most graptolites.
Yeah, and they've got these sort of sharp angles on the sides of the thecae as well.
They do. You sometimes got little spines coming off them. I can't see any on this one.
And there's a little sort of excavation in the one above, just next to the aperture of the one below.
Yeah, just so you've got room for it.
Yeah, quite cute, really.
Yeah. So that's a slightly fancy one.
Yeah.
So that's just a bit in the middle of the colony. If we have a look at the earlier growth stage of the colony, what we call the proximal end, there we go. Right, so it's a bit complicated here. So we've got the two stipes, one going off to the top left and one going off to the top rightish. You can see there's some spines on some of the early thecae.
Definitely.
Yep. And that's the sort of thing that if you're a graptolite worker, you use the early development to classify graptolites. So that would be I'd have to double check, but I think it's something like a pattern D development as opposed to your Normalographus, as you all know, of course, has a pattern H development in which the thecae go straight up from the sicula rather than going out as they are doing here.
Is it just the direction that they grow out in, or is it which one they branch from? Or
there's quite a lot of features you look at, but generally in graptolites you've got what is called the dicellograptal theca, which is the first theca that gives rise to two more thecae. And that can be quite important for telling even genera apart. So when you've got lots of biserial scandent graptolites, so the ones with two sets of thecae back to back, there's quite a lot of different styles of proximal end development, and things like which one is a dicelical theca gets really important. And even in something quite familiar like Dicellograptus, which one is a dicelical theca is important for telling the subgenera apart, which can be a real nuisance if you can't see it, because you do need to have the right preservation to see these things.
Yeah, so this is actually quite a nice example, but you've been talking about the sicula without actually saying what the sicula is for those who haven't actually seen it before.
Oh, that's a very good point. Right, the sicula is the first individual of the colony, so it's your triangular shaped thing, usually about 1 millimetre long, so it would have been conical in life. You would have had the first individual of the colony living in it. They generally, well, in a lot of graptolites, you have the spine coming down off the sicula called the flagella.
One spine, as per spec.
Yep, there we go. And then the sicula gives rise to all the rest of the colony.
So is it normally true to say that the first theca at least, and maybe the second, or the first on one side and maybe on the other side as well, arise directly from the sicula, and then most of the later thecae arise from one of the early thecae?
Generally the theca one on one side arises directly from the sicula, and then all the other theca arise from that theca.
Okay, yeah.
So sometimes, yeah, I'd have to check exactly, because I say it's quite complicated. There's lots of different styles.
Okay, and how many thecae are there in a random sort of graptolite, a normal one?
Oh, I mean, a small monograptid might have 6 or 7 thecae, but that would be something pretty small. You could have hundreds in a large colony, dozens easily.
And this one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 10 on each branch. And that's quite a small one. They get 3 or 4 times that size easily.
Yeah, so you can easily have dozens of thecae in a colony.
Okay, but this is one of the 2-branched ones. You get them sometimes when they're back to back. That's no problem as well. Should we have a quick look at one of those?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
There's one.
That's not a good one there. There we go. That's more like it.
Okay, is that focus? It's difficult to tell.
Yeah, that's close enough.
Okay.
So there you've got the little sicula with the flagella spine sticking out at the bottom. The sicula is overgrown by the other thecae. All of the later thecae just covered it. And those 2 branches effectively are back to back. So they are now sort of completely enclosing the sicula, which is in the middle there. And then they've grown upwards away from the flagella and carried on growing.
Yeah, and that's a very common design for lots of graptolites in the late Ordovician, early Silurian.
And it's got a rod going up the middle called a nema, which is quite handy.
Yep.
Because that's what they use as a template, I guess.
It's basically the guide. In this type of graptolite, it's the guide that the colony goes along. But a lot of other graptolites, like in the dicellograptus we were just looking at, the nema is just a short thing sticking out of the sicula, and it doesn't play any further part in colony development.
Okay, so we've got a pretty good idea what graptolites look like, right?
Yeah, you've got a sicula, varying number of branches, quite a lot of thecae usually.
Don't mind me.
And now for something a bit different.
So, yeah, I'm going to have to let you sort this one out at some point because I don't know which way up it goes.
Oh.
I think you didn't either at the last count.
Oh, right, well, let's find it first off.
You want to focus? There we go.
Right.
Actually, I'll put it sideways since we don't know which way up to put it to start with.
Well, that does mean we can fit the whole thing on.
Exactly.
Right, let's focus.
Yep.
Right.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, that's nice. This is also a graptolite.
Obviously.
It's, how long is it? Have we got a ruler handy?
This is a highly sophisticated way of doing things. That is about 8 mil long, I think.
Yep.
7 anyway.
8 millimetres. And as I say, it's a graptolite.
How do you know that's a graptolite? I mean...
Well, it's got a sicula.
Yeah, but this is presumably just... That's it?
Yes, should we zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. And presumably this is just a really early growth stage of a graptolite as well.
Ah, well, funny you should mention that. It's got probably 2 thecae.
Right, well, let's convince me that it's got a sicula first. I can see a little spine coming out the end.
Okay, well, let's just move along a bit and have a quick look at the whole thing.
Right.
So there we go. Yeah, so graptolites, as we mentioned, a lot of them have a flagella.
Yeah.
And in general, they will have a nema coming out the pointy end of the sicula. So I think...
I can see a nema.
Yeah. Let's go there. So that rod there, coming out to the right, is the nema. So that is the end of the sicula.
Carries on quite a long way as well.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so that's the pointy end of the sicula. Oh, yeah, it's quite long. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah. Right, so if we zoom back along.
Focus.
Yes. So no end to your demands. And at this end we have the aperture of the sicula. And I think this structure here, the sort of
round blobby thing with the little spike on the left?
Little blade thing. It's not a flagella. This particular graptolite is of the group that doesn't have flagella. It's called what's called a rutellum, which instead of being a spike coming out the aperture of the sicula, or being given off from the aperture of the sicula, it's a flat, platy thing that comes off the aperture of the sicula.
What's that for then?
We have no idea. Do you remember what I said about we don't know very much about graptolite ecology? Most of the time we don't know what all those spines and things are for.
It's normally assumed that it's hydrodynamic properties or creating little vortices for them to feed with or whatever.
I mean, probably because, well, these things lived in the water column and they were not terribly big, so any spines or anything would have affected the hydrodynamics. But whether that's what they were actually for and any hydrodynamic effects were just random, we don't know.
Okay, so this is something elongate, which you tell me is a sicula, the entire length of it.
Yes, that's right. Well, it's not just sicula. There's a theca there as well.
There's a theca there?
Yes. We can't see the divisions between theca and sicula terribly clearly here. But in this particular graptolite, the theca 1 comes out of the sort of pointy end of the sicula, somewhere up there.
The prosicula, technically.
The prosicula, yes,
right.
Yes. And then grows down.
And then, are there actually two thecae here, or is there just the one?
Oh, it's really difficult to tell, actually. There's definitely one there. You can see it coming out of the sicula, especially when you use directional light. There's definitely a bit of theca on the other side of the sicula. Whether they're the same theca, I'm not sure. And the reason there might have been a little bit of a jump in the video is because we've just been, having a good look down the microscope at this thing and running around trying to find some extra literature to compare our specimen with.
And ideally extra specimens, but that didn't work.
They're around somewhere and we'll find them when we come to write up the graptolites from this quarry. There's definitely at least one theca there. I think that we might be seeing theca 2 down by the aperture and theca 1 is on the other side. It's also possible that we're seeing theca 1 there and theca 2 isn't developed yet or is around the other side.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is that possibly theca 1 is extending beyond the sicula aperture and it's sort of impressed onto the sicula at the margin, which is why you get those lines there, but we honestly can't be quite sure. But it doesn't matter. Yeah,
because we know what this thing is. It is coronoides. I'm pretty sure I put a species name on it some time ago, but obviously didn't write it down and put it in the box. And it is so distinctive, there's no other graptolite like it.
And luckily other people have described it and shown it in great detail. So we do actually have examples of coronoides with all the developments worked out, so we can look at those instead.
Yes, so this is a monograph. Well, the figure's taken from a monograph by Oliver Bullman that he published in, was it 1967, something like that? They credit graptolites of Balclacci, and this is one of the places where you can actually dissolve graptolites out of the rock, get them out in 3D and see all the detail.
Now that would make life easier.
Easier and also a lot more detailed.
Yeah.
So here Bullman's actually put together an entire growth series of coronoides, starting at the top left from the prosicula, from the first part of the sicula, and at the bottom right you've only got part of the colony there, but that's the aperture of the sicula and Theca 1 and Theca 2 there. So that's the saccular aperture end of quite a mature colony. Because these things, they only ever get at most 3 thecae. Theca 1's about as long as Sacula, Theca 2 is pretty much the same length, and Theca 3 is tiny.
That was actually going to be my next question. So surely these are juveniles, but it's sort of a giant sicula, 2 giant thecae,
That's right.
1 tiny one that gets to be about a tenth the length of the rest of the colony.
Yes, that's right.
What's the point of that?
Do you remember what I said about how we don't understand graptolite ecology?
Oh no, I forgot that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you got the fourth zooid, because the sicula had a zooid as well, of course, is minuscule compared with the vest,
Presumably.
which reminds you a bit of dendroids, where you have the bithecae, which are much smaller than the autothecae and are presumed to have housed males.
But again,
For
we
no
don't know
particular
anything
reason.
about graptolite ecology. So, I mean, dwarf males are a thing
Yeah.
in some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what the bithecae were for. We don't know what this very tiny third theca in coronoides was for.
Do any other graptolites show such a constrained growth history that they get to X number of thecae and then they stop and they never get more than that number of thecae?
Yes, it's actually quite common in meteoritids that the colony has a distinct development and stops and it doesn't grow anymore. But a lot of graptolites could just keep growing for as long as they lived, we presume,
Yeah.
or could just keep growing.
And there's nothing else that does it at such a ridiculously early stage.
Now, well, there's something called Corynoides, which is very closely related,
Yeah, it
probably
doesn't
evolved
count.
from Corynoides. That's got a little twirly Theca 3.
Yeah, it sort of twizzles off to the side of the sicula, doesn't it, or something?
No, it originates high up on Theca 1. No, I think it comes off Theca 2 and just goes a little bit twirly and it's very small and that's it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Wouldn't
Wouldn't you if you could?
Personally, I spend my Sundays doing nothing else. Yeah, but Corynoides, you find it all over the world. You certainly get it in China, you get it in the UK, or you get it in both the Avalonia side of the UK and the Laurentia side of the UK, so in Wales and in Scotland. You get it in North America. Not sure if you get it anywhere else offhand, but probably it was quite widespread.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's abundant. Isle Strawn described graptolites in Shelf Inlier, and he mentions having a slab covered with coronoides.
Just one.
Yeah, so that might have been it was really abundant at one horizon. He didn't
Yeah.
illustrate any of the specimens, which is a little bit annoying.
So there's really a couple of questions I'd quite like to get into here, which are that, firstly, why has this genus, very distinctive genus, never been described from the built-in layer before, especially as we found it at probably the best studied graptolite site in the area. It has been studied intensively by Ellis, who found things that we've spent 30 years looking for and found one specimen if we're lucky, 2 in one case. So that's one aspect. And the other is, this doesn't look like a graptolite, normal graptolite. Where's it come from? And we know something about that, so should we start with that one?
Oh god, so the evolutionary relationships of this thing, they're not certainly worked out because it's so reduced. Well, because it's got such a small number of thecae, it's a tiny number of thecae in comparison with most other graptolites, and it's all a bit weird. We're not quite sure exactly what it's related to. It's probably related to a group called the glossograptids, which have a slightly similar proximal end development. But they have a lot more thecae, so if it is that, it's very highly modified. They seem to belong with that group. That's anyone's best guess at the moment.
I've got to say, I do like the glossograptids. They're great big spiky things, basically.
They are lovely.
They've got spikes going out everywhere and probably spikes on the spikes as well if they could. And they are very, very rare in this area as well.
I think we've got one glossograptus.
That sounds about right. One tiny one from Castlebank.
Yeah.
And apparently Glossograptus fimbriatus, this one with the spikes everywhere, is known from the same quarry, but we've never seen it. But we've seen a specimen that somebody else collected.
Okay, yeah.
So we know it's there, and Ellis found it as well. Mm-hmm. She found everything, apart from this, apparently.
Yeah.
So Glossograptus is a diplograptid, in the sense of it has 2 sets of thecae back to back running up the middle, which are joined.
But that's a description, that's not a measure of phylogeny. It's like saying that something flies. It could be a bird, it could be a bat, it could be a dragonfly.
And it was long thought, I think, that, I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that diplograptid state was a single evolutionary event, that you basically take your two stipes and zip them up back to back, and then that's the next stage of graptolite evolution sorted.
Before people started looking in detail at the proximal end development, yes, that's what they thought. Once you start looking in detail at the proximal ends, you realise there's an awful lot of ways of being a diplograptid.
So we have quite a few diplograptids in this area, and what you're saying is that this is actually a completely different sort of diplograptid with a different diplograptidy origin.
Basically, yes.
Right. So what were its closest relatives like before they turned biserial?
I mean, you can see there's a resemblance with some things in that you've got the sicula, you've got a theca originating very high up the sicula and growing downwards.
Okay.
And
you got these things called isograptids.
Yes, which have that sort of proximal end development. In that particular case, they carry on growing a lot more thecae.
Yeah.
But you can imagine if you just take the proximal end of one of the isograptids and just stop it after you've got one or two thecae, it's not a million miles away, is it?
There's this one I'd never heard of until I was sort of looking things up for this little video. A thing called Graptus. No idea where that's from, but that is ridiculous.
That is quite ludicrous, isn't it? And very distinctive.
Absolutely. But there, you take just the first couple of thecae. That's
Yes.
your form.
Yes,
That
it
is the structure of coronoides.
Yes.
It's completely different to all the graptolites I'm familiar with.
Yes, we don't tend to get those sorts of things around here. Partly because in the UK we've got a bit of a depopulated fauna compared to some other places, and partly because we haven't got rocks of the right age.
Right. Well, these ones apparently were from Sweden.
Yes.
So not that far away in sort of paleogeographic terms.
But these, I think, are a little bit older than any rocks we've got.
Ah, yes, they would be, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, didn't you say something about there is a stratigraphic gap between these isograptids and coronoides?
Well, Mallet's in this treatise was comparing coronoides to a thing called Calpinograptus, which apparently is the most similar. It's not one I've actually seen in person. And there's a stratigraphic gap between that and coronoides. But you do get other members of the isograptids, like Glossograptus, and in fact Cryptograptus in the Bill-thin layer. So you do get the group persisting up until the time of the Bill-thin layer.
Okay. Yeah, so it does kind of make sense. And if you can get that Graptus evolving from this sort of group, then presumably it's got the plasticity and the form to be able to get there from a different route within the group as well.
I mean, in graptolites you quite often get the same sort of thing evolving more than once, so it's entirely possible that, independent derivation from isograptids.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a weird evolutionary origin. I mean, it's quite different to a lot of the other graptolites I'm familiar with, which seem much more sensible.
If you're used to graptolites, yes.
Yeah, exactly. But that is, it makes sense. So that one I can see, it's only fairly recent work that's actually sorted this out at all, is it?
Good old Jörg Mallets, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
fair enough. Right, so we have this thing which is present around the world.
In multiple countries anyway, yes.
At least around the old Iapetus Ocean.
And in China.
And in China,
So
okay.
quite reasonably widespread, and I'd have to check exactly where else it's known from.
Okay, but that is from temperate to tropical across two oceans, basically.
Yes.
So that's quite widespread. And we know that it can occur in abundance.
Sometimes, yes.
And we have found, 5 or 6 of these, and 4 of them were on one day, from scree in loose blocks.
Yes. In a very, very well-known quarry that has been very well studied, and no one has reported one of these from the Bill-thin layer before, ever.
Including Ellis.
Including Ellis, who was a very, very good collector, and who was using the sort of notes and collections of other very good collectors like Nancy Kirk.
We've not seen any in museum collections. We've not had any indication that it was here until they just turn up. So,
And then we get multiple, well, about 6 or 7 specimens in about 2 or 3 visits to the quarry, and then that's it. I think we might have found one since that time.
we found a couple, but yeah, very, very rarely. So we must have just got lucky. Maybe a little bit of the outcrop had collapsed at that point and there was a few loose blocks there. That's most likely.
Yes.
From the same sort of interval.
But then that just gives you the question of why have you only got this graptolite in that particular bit of rock in a quarry that is full of graptolites? And we get graptolites preserved throughout the sequence very, very nicely.
Yep. And why did we get that, or was it Whittard got that slab of, or Bullman? Strawn, sorry. It got that slab covered in them and doesn't mention them as being common apart from that.
I think he only got them at one locality. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They seem to be incredibly localised and isolated.
At least in some places, yes.
Which, for some animals, makes perfect sense. For something tiny that's floating around in the surface ocean...
Or swimming.
Unlikely, but yeah, you never know. Floating or swimming very ineffectually in the surface oceans, because it's kind of tiny in comparison with the waves. And it's very hard to understand what sort of ecology it would have had that would enable this sort of distribution pattern.
You remember how I keep saying that we don't know anything about graptolite ecology?
Absolutely, but we can talk about it, because we've got a video here that apparently people are actually listening to, so they might want something more than we don't know.
I don't know, I reckon they've all given up by this point.
You're probably right. So, just let's sort of think outside the box a bit. I mean, how could you get something which was so rare that it's virtually never been found, and yet it is a member of a group which occurs abundantly when they occur? Is it...
One possibility is that it was somehow a bit less preservable than other representatives of the group. So maybe the periderm was a bit thin or a bit of a different composition.
Doesn't seem that way though. It's preserved in exactly the same way as the other graptolites on these bedding planes.
That's true, and Bullman obviously had quite a lot from Balclacci, enough to be able to get multiple specimens to draw really lovely detailed growth series.
Yeah, I mean the graptolites are pretty, comprehensively the same in terms of their preservation potential as far as we can see.
In general, yes.
Yeah. So, okay, maybe was it living somewhere else? And just during a storm, the odd sort of cluster of them got swept into the region?
Possible, but then storms happen all the time. Why don't we see more of them? At least rarely. You think of all the other sites in the Built Inlier that we've collected graptolites from absolutely extensively, and Corynoides is distinctive. It's large. It's a centimetre long. We'd see it if it was at all common elsewhere. Even if it was a rare part of the fauna, we'd expect to find at least one somewhere else.
And does it make sense ecologically either? Because, again, these things are floating around in the plankton. I know there's some variation in things like water depth, but why would something like this live in one area, be washed around, and not live where it gets washed to?
I don't know, but it's something that graptolites show in general is water mass specificity. You don't see just all the graptolites in an area in every single place. You do get some sort of zones parallel to the coast associated with depth. You do see differences.
We do know that the very spiky ones tend to be in shallow water.
That seems to fit the distribution, yes. So possibly those spikes had some sort of stabilising function or helping to stay afloat function in very shallow water.
But it doesn't explain why they were less effective at living in deep water.
No, it doesn't. And deep water graptolites seem to have been multi-branched, so things like Grpatolites that we see in the Built Inlier and Grpatolites in the Silurian.
Dicellograptus here as well?
Yes, that's true. It's only 2 branches, but still.
But it dominates this assemblage that we find the coronoides in.
Yes, and then even in beds in the same quarry, we get a different graptolite assemblage.
We do. I mean, I was assuming that's because time has changed and you've got overturn in the population ecology, that because of maybe changes in climate or just random changes, some groups have become dominant for a certain time and then declined again across the entire basin.
Possibly, yes. And the problem is that this particular quarry is at the top of the sequence in Built, so it's not like we can go and see what's happening 20 metres further down the road because it's not there.
And of course what you could do theoretically is find other areas of the same Welsh basin which have rocks of exactly this age with graptolites in, and see if we can sort of see the same zoning pattern of abundance changing. And I don't think we have any handy rocks of exactly the same age.
No, you've got the shelving layer, and it shows if you need exactly the same part of the sequence as well as just being the same biozone,
Yeah.
there's certain practical problems there
Yeah.
because of all this botany that is around all over the place.
Yeah, but you'd hope there'd be something useful somewhere. But it's almost like sort of, you could use it almost like ice cores, or sort of looking at trying to correlate abundance of species, if that abundance was expressed over a wide region. Sort of acme biozones in the old terminology.
Yes.
Which was actually used. So they did Graptus tuning fork biozones, Vartus and Murchisuni, are basically acme zones.
Yes.
It's where they occur abundantly.
Yes, there you do have other things as well, of course, but yes.
Yeah, but they're still defined, I think, on the first appearance and the takeover of these two species, which is problematic.
That might be a story for another time.
It might be.
Yeah. So yeah, we do have this big mystery when it comes to coronoides, as in, well, why is it rare?
Yeah. Why is it rare? And then why does it turn up in such a peculiar sort of pattern of just a few at a time?
Yes, why not just one occasionally scattered one? Why this abundance in one place and then nothing as far as we can make out?
If it was just an isolated individual being washed in from somewhere from somewhere else entirely to an area where it just wasn't suited, then you can imagine the odd one washing in and turning up very rarely. And we do get some species where we found one specimen in all our years.
Yes. Or things that are just very uncommon.
But then we also have things like Retiograptus from the same site, which we have found two specimens, something like 25 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that Ellis also found, again, very low numbers. And this appears to have been genuinely there, and yet incredibly rare. So is this going back to this old question of the effect of rarity? Is it just that things that we think of as being really rare are actually not that rare at all?
Yeah, they're actually moderately abundant and hardly anything gets fossilised.
Yeah.
In which case, something like the dicellograptus, how hugely abundant must that have been? How many macula must there have been during life for us to get 5 or 6 on every piece of rock?
Well, you go to seashore today. I mean, Rocky Coast is a bit different, but same sort of principle. Barnacles. Acorn barnacle.
Yes, I suppose. Yes.
That's giving you the sort of similar level of sheer abundance. Mussels.
Yes, I suppose. And something, in the case of macula, of course, the shells probably could last quite a long time being phosphatic.
Yes. Yeah, so
yes.
macula would be concentrated. Whereas graptolites probably would have degraded eventually in aerobic conditions.
But if you think at Castle Bank, we will see some beds that have got really abundant didymograptids, and that may represent build-up of dead individuals on the seafloor for some time.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. So, yeah, either way, they must have been really abundant.
Yes.
So we're talking about the things that would dominate the sort of the ocean surface at that time. But I'm just trying to think of a direct equivalent. And if you go swimming, you don't tend to get lots of graptolites tangled in your hair, but you do see potentially jellyfish.
Sometimes.
You get swarms of them, but those are not abundant on the same level at all.
Oh, I know. Sandhoppers.
Oh, yeah.
The little camelid shrimps that you get on beaches. And I remember one time we were in North Wales on the beach and going for a walk just around about sunset and just walking along near the tide line, and our ankles were getting absolutely peppered by these little shrimp jumping at us.
Yeah.
And there must have been thousands of them. I mean, you couldn't move without squashing some because there was nowhere to put your feet.
And they were hungry.
They couldn't eat us, fortunately, but
They could try.
They definitely made a jolly good attempt. So it's that sort of abundance, probably.
It is. I mean, those are living in a particular habitat just below the surface of the sand, mostly. And then they come out when it's really wet and cool and everything's being washed up for them to nibble.
And the ankles are out, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's that sort of idea, isn't it? That we've got something which is so dominant that you try to ignore it because it's just everywhere. And then amongst those sandhoppers, there will be various things like crabs.
Yes.
And quite a few of those crab species will be frequent, that you will find them if you go looking for them. Some of the pea crabs or the shore crabs or the little masked spider crabs and that sort of thing. And yet those will be equivalent to things like Nemograptus maybe, where we find one of those for every 100 dicellos.
Yes.
And then you get things like the biologically rare species, the ones that we hardly ever encounter, even though they do exist along that coastline, and some that we have never seen.
So, like, I don't know, natterjack toads.
Well, that's true, yes.
Yeah.
But other crabs even.
Yes.
There will be crabs that are that rare, which I don't know the names of, but they exist.
Yeah. And of course, occasionally some of those crab species will have a very good year, and you might see dozens of them when you go out for the walk. And maybe if you fossilise the arthropod assemblage that year, you'll get your thousands of gammelids, and you'll get your tens of other crabs, and you might get 2 or 3 this normally very rare crab.
Yes.
And so if you fossilise any other year, you probably won't see any of the rare crab at all.
You might also get things like reproductive events.
Yes.
So you might get a little concentration if you go on the right day, because they've all come out.
Yes, yes.
And with graptolites, we don't know about their reproduction. We don't know whether there was sort of coordinated spawning or coordination between colonies. But if there was, you may have colonies dying off at the same time.
That's possible, especially something that obviously had restricted growth. It might be like mini squid that just grow, spawn, die.
And if this was a species of graptolite that otherwise floated quite a lot until it was decayed a bit, and most of the time it doesn't sink to the sea floor. Maybe they were quite long-lived. These are large zooids, even if they were small colonies.
They're still small animals, and we're still talking about something centimetre size. But yes, it's possible.
I work with mites that live for 7 years.
That is true. Yes, yes.
So yeah, there are potentially ecological reasons for this as well. But I think we've probably exhausted this for the moment, haven't we?
We've probably exhausted our audience too.
I've certainly exhausted me.
Right.
Too many graptolites.
So there you go. So if you've got any really good ideas about coronoides, please do put them in the comments.
Yeah, because graptolites are familiar as a general group, but when you start getting into the individual weirdnesses of particular species, you can go down all sorts of rabbit holes, and you start trying to understand the details of how these things lived, or the details of why they have the patterns that they do. It's why we do this stuff. It's really quite odd.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything like as much as we like to think we know sometimes.
Yep. It's nice to have mysteries. It gives us something to do.
Corynoides is cool.
Yes.
That should be on a t-shirt. They'd buy it, Some of this lot are absolutely mad.
Ooh, how about a nice t-shirt saying graptolites are amazing?
Oh no. No, sponges. Sponges rule.
Why not both?
Yeah, you can have the graptolites on the back.
I was thinking of the sponges on the back.
I'm sure you were, but I was hoping you'd rebel against that one, because of course most people are going to be taking photos of the backs.
Oh.
Anyway,
yes.
T-shirts are not incoming shortly or anything like that, but we are thinking about it and trying to work out what sort of designs, or whether we need a designer or that sort of thing. So I know a few of you have really promoted the idea that we should provide some merchandise, and it's a lovely idea, but we'll see what we can do. But don't hold your breath, basically.
Right, we should let everyone get on with their day then.
Really?
Yeah.
They've got something better to do?
They can watch the video again.
Oh, yeah. All right, then. No, I wouldn't wish that on you. Bye for now.